Good evening, everybody, and welcome to this evening's update on Tropical Storm Ophelia. So, Tropical Storm Ophelia has formed off the North Carolina coast, and as of 8 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time, Friday, September the 22nd, Tropical Storm Ophelia has maximum sustained winds of 70 miles per hour, a minimum central pressure of 984 millibars, and north-northwesterly movement at 12 miles per hour. And I think there's a decent chance that Ophelia could become a hurricane before she makes landfall early tomorrow morning. And then I'm going to be covering Invest 90L more in the future, but this has a 70% chance now of tropical cyclone formation over the next 48 hours and a 90% chance of tropical cyclone formation over the next 7 days. So looking at the latest National Hurricane Center's cone for Tropical Storm Ophelia, Tropical Storm Ophelia maintains a lot of its subtropical characteristics, including a very large wind field. So we're already seeing tropical storm force winds across eastern North Carolina, even the eastern tip of South Carolina. And as we go into early tomorrow morning, Ophelia is expected to make landfall in the southern Outer Banks of North Carolina, going into 2 p.m. Eastern Time tomorrow. Ophelia is going to move across northeastern North Carolina through southeastern Virginia as a tropical depression by 2 a.m. Eastern Time Sunday morning, going into 2 p.m. Eastern Time Sunday afternoon. Ophelia is going to move across west central Maryland, very close to Washington, D.C., as a tropical depression, and then 2 a.m. Monday across southeastern Pennsylvania as a weakening tropical depression. We have tropical storm warnings in effect from Wilmington, North Carolina, through the Outer Banks, through southeastern Virginia, through most of the Chesapeake Bay, into the Delmarva in the blue, and we even have hurricane watches now in the pink from just north of Wilmington through the southern Outer Banks, as Ophelia could become a hurricane. So looking at the latest Zoom Earth satellite imagery and cone for Tropical Storm Ophelia, Tropical Storm Ophelia still looks like a subtropical storm on satellite with its classic mid-latitude cyclone look. However, we are seeing more clouds around the center, and looking at the radar, we're starting to see possibly some hints of an eye wall forming on the western side with a lot of rain spreading into the eastern half of North Carolina, seeing some heavy rain pushing across Raleigh with some rain bands, as well as Fayetteville to eastern South Carolina, and some moderate to heavy rain in Greenville and Wilmington as these outer bands push on shore from Tropical Storm Ophelia. So as we go into Saturday 1 a.m. Central Time, we're looking at a 70-mile-per-hour tropical storm approaching landfall in southeastern North Carolina, moving through eastern North Carolina just east of Greenville through the day. By Saturday 1 p.m. Central Time, 50-mile-per-hour tropical storm about 30 miles northeast of Greenville, North Carolina. And then by Sunday 1 a.m. Central Time, 35-mile-per-hour post-tropical cyclone very close to Richmond, Virginia. And then moving across into central Maryland by Sunday 1 p.m. Central Time is a 30-mile-per-hour post-tropical cyclone, moving into southeastern Pennsylvania by Monday 1 a.m. and dissipating as a 30-mile-per-hour post-tropical cyclone. So looking at the latest impacts from the National Hurricane Center, first looking at the rainfall accumulations from the Weather Prediction Center, widespread 1 to 2 inches of rain is forecast in the light green across central North Carolina, central Virginia, central eastern Pennsylvania, into portions of Rhode Island and southern Massachusetts, widespread 2 to 4 inches in the dark green for much of eastern North Carolina, Virginia, into most of eastern central Maryland, all of Delaware, most of New Jersey, into Long Island, into Cape Cod, Nantucket, and Martha's Vineyard. And then as we get into these yellows, we could be seeing pockets of 4 to 6 inches of rain across eastern North Carolina, eastern Virginia, including areas like Richmond and areas like Atlantic City in New Jersey. And then in areas like Wilmington down towards New Bern, we could be seeing as much as 6 to 10 inches of rain from Tropical Storm Ophelia. So if you live anywhere in eastern North Carolina, eastern Virginia, Maryland, Delaware, New Jersey, Long Island, and Cape Cod, make sure you're preparing for some scattered to numerous flooding. And looking at the Weather Prediction Center's excessive flooding rainfall outlook for the next 3 days, we have a marginal risk extending through central North Carolina, through Raleigh-Durham, central Virginia, eastern West Virginia, western Maryland, central Pennsylvania, southeastern New York State, most of Massachusetts, all of Rhode Island, and eastern Connecticut in the dark green. A slight risk across eastern North Carolina, Virginia, Maryland, Delaware, southeastern Pennsylvania, all of New Jersey, Long Island, into southwestern Massachusetts, western Connecticut, and this includes Wilkes-Barre, Philadelphia, New York, Hartford, Salisbury, Washington, D.C., Norfolk, and Wilmington, and then in areas like Richmond, Virginia, and coastal North Carolina, including Hatteras, we have a moderate risk of excessive flooding rainfall, with through tomorrow morning, the moderate risk across coastal North Carolina, slight risk across eastern North Carolina, southeast Virginia, and the Delmarva. And then as we go into Sunday morning, the slight risk shifts into the mid-Atlantic with the moderate risk around Richmond. And then as we go into Monday morning, the slight risk shifts to Pennsylvania, into New York, Connecticut, into New Jersey, and the marginal risk into New England as well. So looking at the latest probabilities and timing for tropical storm force winds, across eastern North Carolina, southeast Virginia, you are guaranteed pretty much to see tropical storm force winds, and they're ongoing right now. And then as we go into 8 p.m. this evening, which is pretty much right now, tropical storm force winds into northeast North Carolina, southeast Virginia. Saturday 2 a.m. Eastern Time, we're going to see those tropical storm force winds push across east central Virginia into the Delmarva. Saturday 8 a.m. across central Maryland, southern Delaware. Saturday 2 p.m. into southern New Jersey and southeastern Pennsylvania before Ophelia begins to dissipate. And looking at the storm surge forecast, we're looking at 1 to 3 feet of storm surge from South Santee River through Surf City, North Carolina, and then from Surf City through the Outer Banks through eastern Virginia. We're expecting 2 to 4 feet of storm surge, and then in the Chesapeake Bay, 1 to 3 feet, as well as portions of eastern Maryland through Delaware Bay, and Manasquan Inlet, about 3 feet of storm surge. And closing off the video with the key messages for Tropical Storm Ophelia. Tropical storm conditions are expected along portions of the southeastern and mid-Atlantic U.S. coast within the tropical storm warning area today into Saturday night. Hurricane conditions are possible within the hurricane watch area early Saturday. There is a danger of life-threatening storm surge inundation over portions of eastern North Carolina and southeastern Virginia, including the Pamlico and Albemarle Sounds, the Nueces and Pamlico Rivers, the lower James River, and the lower Chesapeake Bay, where storm surge warnings are in place. Residents in these areas should follow advice given by local officials. Heavy rainfall from this system could produce locally considerable flash and urban flooding impacts across portions of the mid-Atlantic states from North Carolina through New Jersey through Sunday. Swells generated by the system will affect much of the U.S. East Coast through the weekend, likely causing life-threatening surf and rip currents. So if you live across North Carolina, Virginia, Maryland, Delaware, Southeast Pennsylvania, New Jersey, into New England, make sure you're preparing for flooding rainfall, storm surge, and tropical storm force winds and possibly hurricane force wind gusts across southeastern North Carolina. Thanks for watching this evening's tropical update on Ophelia. Please stay safe and have a wonderful evening, my friends.